Hi, my name is Greg Santore. I am the practice leader of the sports leadership practice at Witt Kieffer and national search firm. I am here today with Eli Capilouto, president of the University of Kentucky, and Tim Hall, the athletic director at the University of Maryland-Baltimore County. What we're here to discuss today is the relationship between presidents and their athletic directors, how they work together, what areas that they handle in emergencies and concerns, and just the general interaction that goes on a campus. So I'd like to start this off with you,
Sure.
President Capilouto, if I can. What does effective communications look like between an athletic director and a president on your campus?
Well, for me, you got to know one another. Work together closely. I arrived 6.5 years ago. Mitch and I developed a relationship. Then, given the enormity of our institution, we're a $3.4 billion enterprise, and athletics attracts certainly a lot of attention. We both depend on our staffs to communicate effectively. I think we have those matters that are mostly related to athletics. I'm going to leave athletics. I want to be alerted when we have situations that are going to involve something major. We worked with athletics to fund a $112 million academic science building. That's certainly a major announcement. Naming rights for a football stadium, those kinds of things. We work together. We're both going to be together in making those announcements.
Gotcha. Tim, how does it work on your campus?
Sure. I think first and foremost, having a strong relationship with your CEO is predicated on being in alignment. And so whether you've been working together for a consistent period of time, whether a president is new, or in my situation where I was coming in and serving an institution with a president who had been a long-standing CEO of the institution, making sure that alignment is in place relative to vision and values. And where I see sometimes that maybe get away from an institution is if those values and the vision isn't congruent between the board, the CEO, and the director of athletics. And so, I was doing a study with my senior team, trying to get them to really understand the differences in constituencies in higher education versus the corporate world. And so we were on a whiteboard and we had put up corporations here and higher ed here, and there we got to about 7 key constituency groups for a corporation. For higher ed, we stopped at 23. And so the point was made, there are so many constituents that factor into institutions of higher learning, athletics, and the larger enterprise. And so it's important to be able to, when communicating, know when it is important to use what is not popular in higher education to use the term cliff notes, but when to give the shortened version of something. And then when it's important to visit with your CEO to set context. And so an example would be if a parent is concerned and they call the president's office. That's something that will be passed back, as you mentioned, staffs working together will be passed back to me to handle as appropriate. If there is a severe Title IX violation, however, obviously we're going to work very closely, communicate in more detail, and set that context. So communication is crucial, and I think a lot of it depends on the situation that you're dealing with at hand.
So how do you create those lines of autonomy where you want to be involved, you don't want to be involved? I mean, what sets the tone? Do you discuss that up front, or is situation by situation? If you have a situation, much like Tim said, where you have an angry parent or an angry constituent, I mean, we know all the different things that can happen on campus. How do you decide who takes care of what?
Well, I think for each of the constituent groups, you sort of have an expectation. I say that our board of trustees needs to be informed, engaged, and inspired. They do not need to be surprised. So
great.
We anticipate what they need to know. We also, when something of an emergency nature comes up, quickly who's going to communicate and explain everything. But in advance of that, we want these board members to be knowledgeable. So when it's not in the state of urgency and all, you take those times to build communications at that level so that they're fully acquainted with everything we do, from the high standards we set with academics, our compliance, health and safety, all those matters, so they're well versed. So when you have to communicate on a need-to-know basis very quickly, there's a relationship built. And I say you try to replicate that throughout your many constituencies. It could vary with each one of them.
Tim, you want to address that from your side of the house?
Sure. We are a little bit of a smaller institution, an institution that's only been around for 50 years. And so the dynamics, while there are some similarities to Kentucky, there are some uniquenesses for sure. And in many respects, as a large research university, we act in many ways like a smaller private because of the size of our institution. And so it is a very relational campus, and it's important, as was mentioned, to keep our Board of Regents and our Board of Visitors and others informed on whatever is appropriate for them to know. And so we talk all the time about rule number 1, no surprises, rule number 2, see rule number 1. But we also know throughout the campus we have a communications, regular standing communications team that meets so that if there was an issue relative to fine and performing arts or to the humanities, or engineering through the various deans, we would know who the point of contact person would be in those areas, as well as who it is in athletics, so that we can manage those expectations from the various constituencies. And something that I think oftentimes gets overlooked is the ability to be able to say to somebody, and there's strength in this, I don't know, but I promise I will find out the answer and get back to you in a certain amount of time. And we found on our campus that when you engage like that, more often than not, you're going to be given the benefit of the doubt.
So how do you determine who handles what? I mean, you have a PR, public relations person on campus, and as this event comes up, I mean, is it event by event, occasion by occasion when you decide who's going to handle the media, or do you as president always say, this is something I want to address with my constituency? How do you handle that?
Well, depending on sort of which avenue something may come to the university, you've got to alert laterally across. We certainly have a media communications office that serves the entire campus, but athletics has one. We have one, for instance, at our medical center, and our various colleges could have representatives too. So that coordination and communication across those groups is essential. People closest to it are going to know the most about it. We want to be able to turn to them quickly to get full information. Then depending on the nature of the particular issue, we'll determine who's going to be speaking about that.
Gotcha.
We're really similar, like all presidents do. And I know you probably travel a lot, and our president does as well. And I always, as an aside, wonder when he sleeps. And so because frequently gone from campus, there is a lot of interaction that we have with the president's office at large, primarily through our president's chief of staff. And so, we set context and ground rules up front for what will need to come directly to Freeman, what can go to a member of his senior cabinet or to his chief of staff. And sometimes oversimplified, but it's going back to kindergarten and red light, yellow light, green light. If it is something that could affect the reputation or impact of the institution because of the world we live in relative to media, that has to go at the highest level, certainly right to the president, but then also to his senior communication team. If it is something that is happening that is a less urgent manner, we're able to start the process of handling those within our own department and the appropriate people on campus, and then communicate up the chain as appropriate.
I guess the last question, which is probably going to kind of bring this all together, I mean, if you've been paying attention, which I'm sure you both have, there are 23 open athletic directors positions just at Division I right now. Normally it's way less than that, maybe 5 to 7. So you have people retiring, you have people being forced to retire, you have people leaving for other reasons, and you have people leaving to take these open jobs. So it's kind of been a vicious cycle within the last year. New presidents, new athletic directors trying to build their relationships. Your situations are somewhat different. You have a longstanding AD there, But so how do you approach that? If you're looking at all this change and openings and everything else, what's your thought process on making sure that your relationship with AD is really good?
Well, I had the benefit of succeeding someone who made a great hire. Our athletic director, Mitch Barnhart's been in place for 16 years. He had a clear record when I arrived. We certainly had to develop our working relationship. It was different than he had with the previous president, but it started with our values and our goals and the successes. And Mitch is very methodical in setting those. For instance, top 10 in Directors Cup, because he wants competition across all of our 22 sports to be successful. We have clear goals when it comes to grade point average, for instance, every semester, 11 semesters, department-wide above a 3.0. Those are the things that are important to me. And I'll look at trend data when I arrived. Our student success graduation rates had been going like this. So I knew I had a winner, and it's so important to have continuity in these roles. I cannot tell you. When you build something like compliance, that is a culture you have to develop, and that starts at the top. And so to have someone in place, hired those people have straight access to me, for instance, in compliance. But to build that trust is something that takes time. And that's why I think continuity, stability in a key position like athletic director is just priceless.
Tim, you want to comment from your perspective?
Sure. I think it starts with what I had mentioned earlier, that you come into a situation where values and vision for what athletics is or what you want it to become being congruent. Because if you don't have that, it's hard to go past that. Another thing I think is so important in the relationship is having the unvarnished truth told all the time. And we're in an environment where sometimes things aren't going to go the way that we want. And we have to understand, certainly on our campus, that we are a part of a larger enterprise. We are the Department of Athletics on our campus within the Division of Student Affairs that has been entrusted to me by our president, and that athletic department was entrusted to him by the Board of Regents. And so we are part of something really special. We are not the thing, we are part of the educational enterprise. And so when I sometimes see relationships go askew is when the process, the linear process that I just described gets out of whack. And I also think there's something to be said for the old Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. He used to say all politics is local, and I think there's some truth to that. And I think in what we've seen happen in our industry, maybe fit wasn't. At the outset, fit was right, but then turned out to not be right. But I think what really helps relationships between an athletics director and a CEO be really strong is mutual respect, mutual understanding. Again, on our campus, knowing that we are in the education business, and that is to have these young people progress through 4 or 5 years, which is a tremendous maturation process, and that we're preparing them to go out and be the future leaders of our society. Now, we want to win championships, even at what I would call the mid-major Division I level. And we want our kids to have every opportunity to hit any team-related or individual accolades that they can earn. But at the end of the day, if we haven't put them in a position to enter the workforce, then we failed them. And so working in athletics and knowing that you're an educator and understanding that is always the mission, I think more paramount than anything is what keeps you in a position to have a really strong relationship with your CEO.
Right. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us today at the Athletic Directors University. Again, President Capilouto, thank you. Tim Hall, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Greg Santore. Thank you.